Hello friends, JT Tapias with the Empty Your Bucket Nutrition Plan, and today I want to speak with you about how to change your identity around movement and around food. That's right. Identity is one of those things that most people come in and it's sort of flawed and a little mingled based on their previous experiences. Let me explain. Oftentimes people come in with 20, 50, 100 pounds that they would like to get rid of, and their identity is very much wrapped around the weight they currently are, what they see in the mirror, the things that they have experienced, maybe the disappointments, the disillusions that they've had in regards to dieting and nutrition and all those pursuits that most of us at some point in time have tried to do. We've tried to diet, we've tried to hire coaches, and for one reason or the other, maybe things haven't worked. I actually would say that in the vast majority of situations, it hasn't worked. Most people are out there trying to diet and get in the best shape of their lives, and they're hiring coaches or they're getting on all these different fad diets that are out there. And for one reason or the other, they just haven't had success. And so they're wrapped around this identity that food is this one thing or another. And as they come into our programs, they come in sort of little skeptical of, expectations and what can actually happen inside of the program. And one of the things that we notice often is that as they come into our programs, we realize that they are in this place of skepticism. But as the program evolves and they start to see momentum, they start to lose the first 10, 15, 20, 30 pounds, something really, really interesting starts to happen. Number one, I think the first change I see is a physiological change, right? They feel different. They have mental acuity. They're sleeping better. They're breathing better. And because of that, they continue to do the thing they're doing. And then the next level thing starts to happen. They start to look in the mirror and they start to see themselves very differently. And because they see themselves very differently, they act in accordance with the way they see themselves. So they lose the weight and they gain a little bit of faith, right? They get that faith that, okay, this is happening for me. I can actually make this thing happen. And they continue to do the thing that is actually providing them with the success. And so from there, we actually see that aesthetic change that they start to identify with a different look, what they see in the mirror. Their friends, their family, their circle of influence starts to sort of, congratulate them because they're losing weight, because they look different. They start to ask questions like, what are you doing? Oh my God, you look so different. How much weight have you lost? And you start to see people morph from a very flawed identity and sort of a false belief of who they are and what they can do into this place of faith where they're strong and they're actually waking up every day and doing the things that they need to do to continue with that type of progress. And so I'm here to say, my friend, that in order for you to have true change, in order for you to actually change your identity around food and movement, something has to happen. And that first step is that you need to take a leap of faith in the right direction. You need to find the right program that's going to provide not just the cognitive, but the physiological changes that are going to allow you to change your identity around food and movement. But until that happens, you're not going to believe it. You're always going to doubt it. And you're going to be in this place of skepticism where you're not going to be able to move forward and change your story. That is right. Ultimately, the story that you tell yourself, right, will determine whether you succeed or not, or whether you fail or not. A lot of times we fail because we're very, very wrapped up in this idea of who we think we are because of what we see in the mirror, the things that have happened in the past. And a lot of times this determines our outcome. So in order to get where we want to go with our fitness and nutrition, we need to change the narrative, right? We need to change that story that we're telling ourselves so that behavior can change. I truly believe that behavior shifts identity. As we do more of the thing that we're looking to do and we start to become more of that thing that we want to be, right? We want to get fit. We want to get strong. We want to be able to look in the mirror and look like the best version of ourselves. In order to do that, we first have to change our identity and the story that we keep telling ourselves. I know this sounds a little bit on the sort of theoretical aspect of things, right? You're like, give me some more practical things. How do I lose the weight? Well, before we actually get into the practical stuff, which is actually the easy stuff, we actually have to get into the games that we play in our own minds. We need to change our story and we need to change our identity so that we can start adding and incorporating these actions and these shifts and these practical things that really get us to the other side. Secondly, I've noticed that when we change identities around food and movement, one thing happens, and this is probably one of the hardest things in this whole equation. We notice that the people, the places, and the things that we do start to change. Let's talk about people first. The people that we hang around with, our friends, our family, the people we love, the people that we have built a bond with. Most of the people that we have built a bond with, we've built that bond around food, around drinks, around activities. When we change that main component of food, right? When we go from eating the burgers, the pizza, the junk food, right? Eating whatever at whatever time with those people. And then all of a sudden we start to create what we call self-binding strategies, nutrition, a nutrition plan, a diet. And we start to engage with these people. They almost don't identify with who we are, right? They're used to this person that just eats whatever. And as soon as we start doing that, there's sort of a disconnect. And so oftentimes with people that hang around us in this environment of eating whatever and doing whatever, start to sort of see us very different, and one of two things happen. They're either happy for us and they jump on that bandwagon, or they simply leave, right? This was my experience many years ago when I upped my standards and I stopped doing a lot of the things that I was doing because I wanted to live differently, right? I wanted to rise above all the stuff that I was doing. And at the time, it was a very toxic environment. And so the people that I was hanging out with, instead of actually jumping on the bandwagon with me, they separated, and those people, unfortunately, from afar, I had to love them from afar because they weren't in that same mindset and that same identity that I was looking to embrace so that I can raise my standards. And so with a lot of the people that you hang out, once you start raising those standards and you start demanding more of yourself and you start upping that identity to a better version, a lot of times those people disconnect. Places, right? Places, things that we do, places where we seek entertainment. Sometimes those places are triggering and tempting. That can be a bar, that can be a restaurant. And if we're trying to stay away from those types of things, we may have to disconnect from those places for a little while. And of course, that creates a little bit of tension because that calls for us to reinvent ourselves and figure out other ways to entertain. And that can be tricky, my friend. I remember I knew that I couldn't just take one thing out and just leave it at that because I would have defaulted back to the places where I was going. And so Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, I had to pick a very different activity than I was used to. I was used to back in the day when I was sort of living my life without any kind of boundaries. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday were big party days for me, but I didn't want to do that anymore when my life radically changed. And so Friday night, I would seek out some type of meeting, some kind of place where I could still be social, but it didn't have those toxic components that my other environment had. And so Fridays, I would sometimes find a church to go to. On Saturdays, I would get invited to an afternoon walk at the park, or people would meet at some place and do some physical activity in the mornings, right? So I would do that. And then on Sundays, I would wake up and go for a run. And I wanted to do different things. I had to change my old environment so that my identity could begin to change and continue to stay in that same type of change that I was seeking, right? So I had to change the places. And lastly, I had to really do some self-inventory of the people, the places, and the things that I was attached to. So there were idols in my life, there were crutches in my life, things that I would replace emotions for. So if I had an emotion of sadness, I was bored, happy, sad, any of those emotions, what I would generally do is I would have crutches in my life, right? And back then it was alcohol, and at some point, unfortunately, it was drugs and things that I was mitigating emotions with in order to get through life, crutches, right? So I had to really identify those, and I had to get very real with myself and say, why am I having to, change my state in order to feel right about myself? And there was a lot of introspection. It was a lot of thinking and really sitting back and trying to analyze why I was doing what I was doing. And in the minute I did that, I had a decision to make. Does this thing profit me, or is this thing a loss? And if it was a loss, I just pushed it aside. And I just wanted things that were profiting me, right? And so I had to really dig into people, places, and things in order for me to change my identity. I had to change my story. I had to change my circle of influence. I deleted over 500 phone numbers that were inside of my phone at the time because there were people I loved, but these people weren't willing to change their standards, and they certainly weren't willing to change the identity that they had at the time. And so because I wanted to rise above all the noise, and because I truly believe, and I say this in a loving way, if you want to soar like an eagle, you can't hang out with scavengers. And that was a hard truth that I had to learn. And until I was able to do that, I couldn't really change my identity around people, places, things, change my behavior, and continue on this very positive trajectory that radically changed my life and brought so much happiness and fulfillment. Not the happiness that lasts for a little while, but that happiness that comes from being fulfilled because you know that you're showing up as the best version of yourself. So my friend, I want to end it like this. I want to say that if you're looking to truly embrace a lifestyle of healthy eating, movement, you want to get healthy, you want to be the best version of yourself, my friend, you need to change your identity. And the best way to do that is to get momentum. Take a leap of faith, move forward, start to change, start to see the physiological changes, the cognitive changes. And as you start to get excited by that, slowly but surely, your identity around food and movement begin to change it. When that happens, you are a radically different person, and the things that show up in your life are amazing, fulfilling, and you have this peace that surpasses all understanding. Guys, today we spoke about how to change your identity around food and movement. I hope you got something out of that. I certainly hope that you do something with it. You can't just keep this information and not activate it. Activate these things, and you're gonna see some radical positive changes in your life. My name is JT Tapias with the Empty Your Bucket Nutrition Plan. If you enjoyed this video, check this video out here. I'll talk to you guys soon. Ciao, ciao.